Now, this will bring me to the question of, is multiculturalism, how good is it really for the development of any society, especially of a nation or a country? In this age, it has been championed multicultural society. But most of human societies have been balkanized. Most of human society have been tribalistic. People usually coalesce along a shared ethnic, racial, or religious identity. People coalesce along that line. If you even look at most of the countries in Europe, the way they are structured, they're usually structured along the lines of, okay, the common core of that nation is a certain ethnicity. Then maybe there are just one or two other tribes and all that, but that is the way it is. Now, one place where I would put some blame on the colonial masters in Africa was their inability to forge a sort of a national sense, a national identity in the areas they ruled over. Because primarily, I don't think they were so much concerned with nation building as they were with the economic aspect of their empires. They just wanted to make money. And take Nigeria, for example. The way they ruled the northern part of the country was different from the way they ruled the southern part of the country. So with the northern part, because they already had emirs that they could rule with as proxies, they left that system like that, which is still plaguing us today because those emirs and the rest, they are so powerful. They have so much power. In the southern part of the country where that wasn't so, you didn't really have strong kings and all that over people. They sort of instituted another system. Now, these two systems were at variance, and you bring these two peoples together, you haven't forged a sense of national identity. Most of the North they didn't even bother to try and educate them because it was the Christian churches that were doing the missionary work and they were doing the education. Because they didn't want to rock the Muslim North, they really did not introduce mission schools into the North. And that led to a big problem of, the Northerners being more illiterate than the Southerners. So by the time independence came, both sides were not even, they were not seeing eye to eye. Yet the political power was structured such that the North would have an overwhelming advantage over the more educated South in the running of the affairs of the country. So that's a recipe for all sorts of disaster. So that national identity wasn't formed in the first place. And knowing that people are tribal, if you don't try to do that, once you leave, once the influence of the colonial masters leave, everybody will just devolve into a state of trying to grapple for power, trying to grapple for power. Look at the Nigerian Civil War. What caused the Nigerian Civil War? If you look at the first coup in 1966, those young officers, Kaduna, Nziegu, Ifejina, and the rest, those young Igbo officers, principally Igbo officers, they had good ideas. They really wanted to make the country great. But they made a fatal mistake in the sense that when they were killing the leaders, the Nigerian leaders there, they killed mostly northern Muslim leaders, leaving the mostly Christian Igbo leaders at the top untouched. Either they were out of the country or somehow. I don't know whether it was by design or, but that sparked sort of a distrust, which is still plaguing us today because the Northerners saw it as an ethnic, it was an attack on their ethnicity. And within a couple of months, they did their own coup that killed the Igbo president at that time. And things as that mutual suspicion is still there till this date. That was the seed for that mutual suspicion where the North doesn't trust the East because of that. So if that national identity, that sense of nationality was there in the first place, nobody would be thinking along so much emphasis on the ethnic lines. So, however, that is in the past. We can't undo the past. What is done is done. The question is, how do we fix the problems we have currently?
I guess the last point I just want to quickly explore with you, because you mentioned the most negative thing about Britain ruling or colonizing Africa was not leaving that national identity. I think the biggest mistake was them trying to rule in the first place. I think the biggest mistake was the whole scramble for Africa situation. I think the biggest mistake was, for example, the Europeans having a meeting. People might be surprised at me saying this, but it's true. Europeans having a meeting with no African person present, and they're literally deciding the fate of Africa and who gets what. I I understand trade, I do, but I think that's what caused the issue. Because though, yes, I know the argument of colonization is, well, these were unsettled and unstable societies before the Europeans came. But if you think about it, the Europeans coming and actually having political and institutional influence in these countries could have been what exacerbated the tribalism. Because, like you mentioned, you have coalitions with Europeans, but then Nigeria is naturally tribalistic. So when the Europeans go there, they don't think that they're going to, Nigeria as a whole and working with this group, so that group is representing Nigeria as a whole. No, so that's what causes or deepens the friction amongst groups. So what do you say to that? So you say the worst thing they did was not leaving that national, like unified national identity. And I say, well, that's not up to them. And it's not up to them to decide, that there is a need for national identity in the first place. Now, there should be, mutual respect, there shouldn't be warfare, but lack of warfare doesn't mean unity. I don't think that's necessarily the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. So I still disagree with you.
That's why I like talking to you.
Yeah. I don't think that colonialism was the worst thing. I think what I said earlier, not leaving the national identity, was the worst thing, because that was basically how business was done in the world then. People conquer other people. They impose their ideals, they impose their rules. It's only recently that it's no longer fashionable for countries to conquer other countries, like what Russia is doing now. Everybody's shouting, but that's the way things have always been. That was business as usual. That was business as usual in that time. People conquered other people, and then they imposed their rules, their ideals. And so the thing is, now it has happened. But what do you do with that when you've conquered the people? What do you do? Do you leave them more fragmented than you met them? Or do you put a strong system in place? So their failure to put in nationals, and you can see this replicated all over many countries in Africa where the borders were just drawn arbitrarily based on spheres of influence. Well, if the African tribes had the power, they would conquer other tribes as well. I mean, the Benin Kingdom, they conquered other kingdoms, smaller kingdoms close to them, the Yoruba kingdoms themselves, even the Hausa Fulani kingdoms in the north. They did that as well. People had that desire to conquer other people and to bring them under their rule. So I think that was business as usual. But business as usual took us very close into this age we find ourselves, and they just left without forging that national sense.
I don't think that's where I will strongly disagree. I don't think it's up to an outsider or external force or Europeans to forge a national identity. I believe
it doesn't matter.
I understand. For example, Ethiopia. Italy tried to take over Ethiopia. Italy, gave guns, to the opposition of the ruling party, whatever at that time, for the purposes of dividing the nation. But it was Ethiopia that said, no, we may disagree on any other thing, but when it comes to, our national identity on this point, it's up to us. It wasn't up to another force. And Ethiopia was the only country that wasn't colonized by the Europeans. So I'm not saying in terms of resistance, that's a separate topic. I'm talking just about national identity.
But the thing is, you're making my point, because Ethiopia had a national identity.
But it wasn't forged by the Europeans.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Their national identity predated the Europeans. What is the Nigerian national identity before the Europeans came? There was no Nigeria. There was no Nigerian national identity. It was just different tribes put together. So what are you going to protect? What are you going to fight for? But the Ethiopians had a long history of having an independent state, which was sort of homogeneous, maybe racially homogeneous, and also culturally Christian as well. So they had an identity that predated Europeans coming to their shores. Most of the other countries in Africa did not have that. So what was there to fight for?
Yeah, I get you. Okay. So that's it, I think.
Yeah. It was a good one.